Well, we're going to look at the amazing geology of Phillip Island, Victoria. And in particular, we're going to look at some features to be aware of when you go on a field trip. And the first feature that we want to talk about, the first important things, is to do with excursion safety. And so there's a number of points, very common sense things to be aware of, but we want everybody to be safe. We don't want anybody to receive any injuries or any problems at all. So one of the first points is when we're in a group and traveling along, walking along to look at something, watch the road for yourself. If the group is crossing a road, don't just walk with everybody, but check the road yourself to make sure it's safe to cross. Watch out for the traffic and cars. There's no safety in groups, so you need to be very careful about watching the road. Also, it's great to see the rocks, and there's usually different size ones, and sometimes there's big ones that we want to make smaller, but do not smash or throw rocks, because we don't want any pieces breaking off or rocks skipping along and hitting anybody and injuring people. No smashing, no throwing of rocks. And usually when you go out in the field, there's some embankments which can be steep, very interesting to climb, but don't climb up tall embankments because it's not so difficult to slip and fall down. And we don't want any injuries. Don't climb up tall embankments. Stand clear, considering embankments, stand clear of any embankment that's high, and don't stand where something that's up high can come down and fall on top of you. Stand clear of overhead embankments. And just be very careful of walking around. Watch your step. If you're stepping off a coach, you're getting out of a car, watch where you're stepping. Make sure you don't step in a gully or slip down a gully or step into a hole or a channel or something like that, or slip on the grass. Just be very careful where you step, that you keep your footing secure. Excursion safety, high priority. Make sure that everybody is kept safe. Now, on your excursion, there's a little booklet which will be very helpful for you to understand what's going on. You will not be able to have access to the guide all the time. You will not be able to hear maybe everything that is said, but the booklet will be very, very helpful for you. Especially in the front, there's a page of things to watch out for. A whole lot of geological items that you need to make sure that you've seen them and you understand what they're talking about. Plus, there's birds and animals and other things which make sure that you've seen them and that you understand them. So that page, what to look out for, is a very, very helpful page. The other part of the booklet is in the middle. There's a geological map which shows you what rocks you're walking over. Very helpful to refer to this regularly when you're looking at different places, when you're walking around the island. And so you know what rocks are there and what you're looking at, and you look down at the legend below and you can see the various colors which indicate what rocks they are, and you'll be able to see what is there. The interesting thing is that the legend is arranged in order. The youngest rocks are at the top, the oldest rocks are at the bottom. And so they're arranged one on top of the other and the other and the other, right through like that. And you can see the sequence of events which occurred. And the question is, how do the geologists work out that sequence? How did they figure it out? Well, you're going to see that on your field trip. That's one of the things you're going to understand. It's very, very simple. And it's quite an interesting puzzle. And so the legend, we talked about that, the order of it. Now, there'll be a little page of puzzles, little page of these little geological puzzles which you can do, which shows how geologists work out the order and the timing of things. So, for example, we're going to look at some, and then you'll be able to do the rest. So let's have a look at the first one, number 1. What is the order? Here we see that there are 2 layers of rock, and there's a man standing on top of them. and the bottom layer, which is brown, and the next layer up, which is orangey yellow color. The bottom layer has got fossils in it. It's got ammonites in it, and the layer of rock above it has got fossil fish in it. So which came first? Well, clearly the bottom layer had to be there first before the top layer could be deposited on top of it. So layer B was first, rocks B were first, and A was second. So we work out the order of the rocks from the sequence, the layers one on top of the other. Superposition, that is called. The one way one rock is superimposed upon the other. So that's the first one. We'll have a look at the second one as well, where we have a volcano. Can you see there's a volcano which is erupted on the landscape? So we have the volcanic shape, and the lava has come up and is erupted onto the landscape. So here we have the landscape, the rock. And so what's happened is there's been some sort of movement. Maybe there's been an earthquake which has occurred, and the land has moved and it's cracked open and produced this crack through the rocks. And from underneath, there's this molten lava comes up, which has been melted, and it's very, very hot, comes up and it erupts onto the surface and builds up and builds up and builds up until there's eventually a large volcano on the surface. So B, the landscape was there first, and the volcano A was second. So we can figure out the order of that. And so that's how geologists work it out. And there's another 6 that you can do to figure out the order of the geological events which occur. And you'll have a lot of fun for that. So work that out. And you can talk among yourselves, work out amongst yourselves what the order is. And if there are any questions, we can answer them on the day when you're in the field. Now, I'd like to just go back to this geological excursion guide again and explain a little bit about what's in it and how to use it. Now, of course, the geological map, you're very familiar with that now, and how you need to be able to look at that regularly when you're in the field. Look at that geological map, understand what other geologists have seen about it. And of course, they may be right, they may be wrong, but you'll be looking at the rocks in the field, and that will give you a guide as to what is there and what to look out for. And we'll just take as an example, pyramid rock. So you go to the page in your excursion where it talks about pyramid rock. And here it is on this page here. And we see the section pyramid rock, and it begins with a little section which explains how to get there and what roads to go down and how far it is. And so how to get to pyramid rock, that's the first thing. And then over the page, there's a lot of information here about what to look out for. And you can actually, when you go to this particular site, you can open the book, and with a friend, or maybe 2 or 3 of you together, you can take turns in reading the section to each other and making sure that you actually see what is being referred to, different aspects, and you can discuss among yourselves what it actually is. So that's the evidence, that's the geological information which you see with your own eyes, which is there. So that explains what to look out for. And the next thing is it goes on, for some sites there's quite a lot of information, for others there's not so much. And then down at the bottom there's a section called significance, which explains what's the significance of what you're looking at. And it points out to many features which indicate catastrophe, which are connected to Noah's flood, which are connected to lots of water, which are connected to erosion and folding and all those sorts of things like that. So the significance is there. So that will give you a really good understanding of what you're looking at. And if you work that together in pairs or threes, that will be really, really helpful. As good as having a guide with you if you read that. And there's other parts of that book too, which are worth referring to. There's a section at the back called Some Rocks Around Phillip Island. And it's just got and the number of the rocks which are itemized and little descriptions of them, which indicates what's there. So that's a good one to refer to. And another page, which is really helpful, begins with a section called Historical Geology, finding out the key to understanding the rocks. So you can look at the rocks in the field. That's the evidence that we see in the present. But how did it get there? And that's where the story comes in. People who were not there, who didn't see it happen, make up a story. And so we begin with the Bible. We believe it's an accurate history of the whole world, human history, the world history. And so we use the Bible to explain the rocks. And so this little section, it's a fairly simple section, explains how that is done. And then another section just after that, a few pages, are looking at the geological history of Victoria within a biblical perspective. And again, so we've got the historical framework from the Bible. Now we're applying it in the field to what we've seen on Phillip Island. And we find that what we see on Phillip Island actually applies to most of the coast, eastern coast of Australia, which is really, really cool. And so you understand Phillip Island, you can understand the geology right up the eastern coast of Australia. So that's the booklet. And before we go into the field, remind ourselves, really, really important, excursion safety. Watch the road for yourself. Don't smash or throw rocks, cause anybody any harm or danger. Don't climb up steep embankments. You can easily fall down. Stand clear of overhead embankments where rocks could fall on you, and watch where you're walking. Don't trip on gullies or loose rocks or slip on grass or anything like that. Make sure you think safe, stay safe. And so that is really, really cool. So we look forward to seeing you on the geological excursion.